So a political story comes out today. The headline is Ben Carson admits fabricating West Point scholarship. And we decided to go directly to the candidate himself than trust what we're reading in newspapers or online or articles, et cetera. How are you, Dr. Carson? Welcome to the program.
I'm doing very well. I have no idea where Politico gets their story from. It's just total fabrication.
Well, apparently this, I just want to go through the story because I think this is important because it says in the story that this occupied apparently they call a central place in your tale for years, and that in your book Gifted Hands that you were 17 years old and you were introduced in 1969 to General William Westmoreland, who had just ended his command with the U.S. forces in Vietnam, and that you dined together. Is that true?
It may well have been, but what I actually have said is that because of my rapid rise in ROTC to become the city executive officer in less time than anyone had ever done it before, I got lots of invitations to lots of fancy things, including congressional dinner, medal winner dinners, and Dr. Westmoreland, I know he was involved in at least one of the things.
But the year we're talking about is around 1969.
Right. But, yeah. So,
by the way, that's the year the Mets actually won the World Series. Okay, go ahead. I'm just reminding people.
We're approaching a half a century there. So, I remember very specifically that because of my rapid rise, I was told that they could get me into West Point and I would never have to pay a penny.
So the whole...
And I was very flattered by that, but I said, I want to become a doctor. It's always been my dream. So even though I'm very honored, thank you, I didn't pursue that.
So in other words, because you were an ROT top student in the city of Detroit, that's what you're saying. In that role, you were invited to different dinners, military dinners, at around the time of 1969. Is that true?
Correct.
And at one of these dinners, at some point, you met General Westmoreland.
Right.
Did you ever say that he offered you a full scholarship to the military academy?
No. I don't remember who the people were. There were multiple military people that I talked to. I mean, again, we're talking almost 50 years ago. There's just no way I'm going to remember who they are.
Yeah, and the big point of the story was, well, West Point never has a record of you applying. Did you ever say you applied?
No, I didn't. I quashed it right away. I said I was very honored, but I'm going to be a doctor. In other words, there were people that were saying to you, you know what, you could go to West Point. By the way, I think everybody gets a scholarship to West Point. I don't think that, I think that's the whole deal. I don't know if I'm mistaken there or not. Yeah, I think if you go there, I think you don't have to pay, I think.
All right, so at these dinners, because you were a top ROTC person, at one point said, hey, with your record, we can get you a scholarship to West Point and a full ride, and you can go to the military academy. And you said no, but in the course of your life, you repeated that story, and you're saying it's 100% true.
Oh, absolutely, without question.
Yeah. And were you ever introduced to folks from West Point by your ROTC supervisors?
Some of those people may have well been from West Point. There were a lot of different military people.
Yeah.
And again, we're talking almost 50 years ago.
What do you think this is all about then? In other words...
I know what it's about. I mean, because I've talked to, a lot of people from my past, and these people are just roaming through everything. They're absolutely certain there must be a scandal of some type with this guy. He must have had an affair with some nurse. There must be something. And they're getting really frustrated because they just can't find anything.
Yeah. And all this it's never said that you applied, so the fact that they're saying that you applied to West Point is kind of irrelevant.
That's
if you're saying that there were people that supported you and your rise in the ROTC and said, hey, we can get you a scholarship to West Point, that does not sound anything like the way this was written up to me.
No, they blatantly lied. There's no other way to put it. There's no kind way to put it. It's just a blatant lie.
Now, I know that there are other questions that have come up here, and I want to give you an opportunity, although, I almost feel like I'm falling into the trap of being a CNBC reporter, and I really don't want to do that. But in fairness to me, Dr. Carson, I've asked you a ton of substantive questions. So,
sure.
I think because this is big news today, I want to give you a chance to correct the record. I think it's important for you to do so. For example, reports about a violent past. This is a CBS story headline. Ben Carson, CNN reports on violent past, quote, a bunch of lies.
Yeah, well, basically, what they've done is they say, we went back and we talked to, 8 or 9 people, and they said that they don't know anything about this. Well, first of all, the people that they talked to, why would they know about specific violent rage incidents that occurred on the spur of the moment? I admitted that I would fly off the handle and do things. So the only people who were specifically involved. Now, the lock in the hand with the gash in the forehead, that occurred at Wilson Junior High School. None of those people that they talked to...
Is this when you punched a classmate in the face?
Yeah. None of those people that they talked to were there. And
none of them?
And most of them were people that knew me in high school. The last violent episode I had was in the 9th grade, early in high school. That's when my major transition occurred. Most people knew me after my major transition, and even if they'd known me before my major transition, it only would have been the time when I had a violent outburst.
In other words, you told stories that you'd once tried to hit your mother with a hammer, you punched a classmate in the face, and you tried to stab somebody. Are all those stories true?
Oh, absolutely, 100%.
Now, when you talk about your transition, do you know the name of the person you tried to stab?
I do.
Have you ever said it?
It was a relative who does not want to be subjected to the media.
Well, let me
ask them if they would mind.
What is the transition that you talk about, and what was the age of this transition? In other words, you're being honest and forthright, and you're saying, I was a pretty violent, angry kid, and I transitioned my life around. And by the way, you come off as anything as angry and violent at this point in your life 50 years later, but what happened to change you?
Well, I locked myself in the bathroom that day, and I was quite distressed, just having tried to stab someone, and recognized that had that belt buckle not been there, they could have been severely injured. And
how old were you at the time?
14. So I just started praying. I said, Lord, you got to help me, because I had turned things around academically by that time. But I realized that with those outbursts, that something would happen, and there's just no way I was going to make it as a doctor.
Are those the 3 major outbursts, the one with your mother, the stabbing incident, and punching a kid in the face, or were there many more?
No, there were others.
Oh,
of course.
I said, if people start going into my background, I don't think there was a single day that went by where we were hockey players and we played football and basketball and stickball and stuff. We always fought. Had fist fights almost every day. I don't know what life is like today, but, it was not that odd that somebody had a fist fight. I think the stabbing incident, the hammer incident I can understand why people might be disturbed about that. Are you saying from the time that you changed, that your path changed, your trajectory changed dramatically and your temper stopped right there? And
it changed that day.
And you never acted like that again?
I stayed in that bathroom for 3 hours, praying, reading from the book of Proverbs, and contemplating my life. And I came to an understanding that to lash out at people was a sign of weakness rather than a sign of strength. It meant you were easily manipulated. And also that it was a sign of selfishness, because it's always about me, my, and I. And if you let somebody else be the center of attention, you're not likely to get angry.
I don't remember Barack Obama getting the kind of scrutiny by the media. Now, he did get it from me, but getting the kind of scrutiny that you're now getting. What do you make of that?
Well, they have an agenda, and they're frustrated because they can't find anything. And, yesterday it's anger. Today, it's the West Point story. Tomorrow it'll be he wet his pants in kindergarten. We found evidence. It's so silly. And, part of it is to distract people.
One of your opponents, Donald Trump, has tried to jump on this, and he's been tweeting out a lot about this, with Ben Carson wanting to hit his mother on the head with a hammer, stab a friend, and pyramids built for grain storage. Don't people get it? Carson now admits his friend Bob, he tried to stab. Bob was saved by the belt buckle, no longer exists as Bob, wrong name. What is your response to him?
Well, it sounds like he's pretty worried about me.
And that's your only thing. So what do you think it means for people that want to get into the public eye? I mean, I remember it became a big deal when Mitt Romney was running because he had this incident. I guess it was at that high school that he was at, that he might have bullied somebody and cut the kid's hair.
Well, obviously, it is. These are the kinds of things that discourage, good people. Our country was designed for citizen statesmen, not for career politicians. But the career politicians want you to believe that they're the only ones who can solve their problems. The media wants to be the ones who kind of select who the people should be. And, it's interesting. When I'm out there, I was doing book signings this week, there's virtually no place that has less than 1,000 people, and in some cases 2,000 up to 3,000 people. And, almost the constant message I get from people, don't let them get to you. Please don't quit. Please hang in there. Because the fact of the matter is, if my candidacy is successful, it's really a candidacy of the people, the common people, and to restore the people to the pinnacle where they belong, with the government there to assist the people, to facilitate life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, not to dictate to the people. But it will also mean that a lot of people who are not career politicians might now think about throwing their hat in the ring, because we have a lot of incredible people in this country. But why would they ever even think about getting into this morass when they see these kinds of things happening?
If they did this vetting for talk show hosts, I'd have to quit because I think I had more fights than you, but okay.
I want to prove that you can get through this, that you can come through all of this. And, we, the people, can take our country back. It's going to be a fight, and I know that. I knew that from the beginning.
Do you think this is the media, or do you think, we saw Jeb Bush's campaign and their PowerPoint on Marco Rubio was pretty brutal. Do you think maybe this is your opponents?
Oh, well, I know it's not one or the other. It's a combination.
So you think it's a combination. Let me ask about the comment over the pyramids. Historically, it's been believed that was the place that were built to bury the pharaohs. And you said, no, it also held grain. And
no,
right, actually, you did say plausible theory. The comment has gotten picked up so often that I wanted to ask you about it.
Yeah, because, it was a pretty amazing feat. And, if you believe the biblical account, that Joseph was, inspired by God and had a way of storing grain for 7 years back in those days, it would be very hard to do that unless you had a gigantic facility and unless it could be cordoned off in hermetically sealed ways. It looks like they were able to do that with the pyramids. So I think it's a plausible theory. Now, of course, people who don't believe in God, don't believe in the Bible, that's complete and total utter foolishness to them.
Dr. Carson, we appreciate it. I hope you found it worthwhile, the opportunity to clarify all this.